Sorry about the bird noises, this is Australia. Welcome this week to Toyota CHR. What can I tell you about CHR? Well, it comes from a time when Toyota have decided that they're not going to make boring cars anymore. They want to make them a little bit more interesting. They don't care whether you like them or not, but they do care that you feel something. And I think this looks very, very good indeed. The front is deeply sculpted and these lights are all LED, including the daytime running lights. And they also double up as the indicators, which I think looks particularly smart. CHR comes in 2 trim levels and 2 drivetrains. This is the Koba, and you can tell it's a hybrid because it's got blue around the Toyota symbol here on the grille. This symbol is also solid because that's where the radar is for the active cruise control. It's one of the many safety features this has built into it, but I'll tell you more about those in a tick. Some of the other things that Koba comes with are these 18-inch wheels. I mean, they look great, but they're just wheels at the end of the day. But there are a few things I particularly like. The coupe bit of the coupe high rider is because this window line looks slightly coupe-esque, but of course it's obvious that it's not. There's a handle here up by the roof, which opens into the back, and the back is quite snug. This is a small car after all. To one of CHR's more interesting features, and that's this tail light that sticks out. You can see how deeply sculpted this is. It comes out of this big fat muscular wheel arch, up over the light and then up onto the back. And there's this really deeply sculptured air device. And you can see from the top that it's actually just a little wing on some sort of fin things. Also along the top is a black roof, which continues down the hatch onto this air dammy looking device. Under here is the rubber button that gives you access to the boot. It's not electric, but that's okay. This is a relatively inexpensive car. Now, unlike some hybrids that we've tested in the past, this one hasn't sacrificed a spare tyre to get the batteries and the electric motor in. You can see that under the back floor is the spare tyre. Now it is just a temporary spare, but that's okay by me. The seats go down in a 60-40 split, and with the seats up, you get about 310 litres worth of boot space back here. There's a few things about this particular hybrid that I think that you should know. For a start, it is more efficient. Even though it's got a 1.8 litre petrol engine with the electric motor, it's more efficient than its 1.2 litre pure petrol turbo sister. The interesting thing about the hybrids though is they only come in a front wheel drive. The cabin is very neat and very tidy, but it's all asymmetric, which does my head in. Nonetheless, I quite like the look. So there's little asymmetric panels here with the air conditioning controls on. It's got dual zone climate control, temperature controls just here, and right up the top, you almost can't see it, but there's a seat heating button, one for each side. So 3 levels of seat heating, no seat cooling. There's AM and FM, but no DAB, which I think is a bit sad. Down below, a couple of interesting buttons. You can turn the traction control off, and there's a brake hold button. If you come up to a set of lights, you put your foot on the brake. Once you stop, take your foot back off the brake again, and the car will hold it for you until you press the accelerator. And there's a pure EV button. And that's the main difference between Toyota EVs and some of the other hybrids. I rather suspect that that's why Honda has not had successful hybrids really in Australia ever. And that's one thing I like about Toyota. They kept up with it even though it looked like it wasn't going to be a success. There's a few little quirks too about the gear lever. There's reverse, neutral and drive, but then past that you'll notice a B. And you put it into B for extra braking, so regenerative braking, and that adds charge to your batteries. And that's the other thing about hybrids that I want to point out. They charge the batteries as you go. So this car will go as far as its 38 litre tank will take you, which currently, according to this, is 450 more kilometres. That then makes this a viable option for someone that wants to do a bit of a road trip. You could head out in this theoretically. Which brings us to fuel consumption. Jesus, Mary and Joseph. I know you've seen me on this bridge once or twice, but despite the fact that that's pretty gnarly, the suspension handled it pretty well. Anyway, back to the fuel consumption. The combined fuel consumption of this particular hybrid is 4.3 litres per 100 kilometres with 97 grams per kilometre of CO2. And the indicators are on the right side too, which I like very much. And so what that means is that you have a relatively small, relatively efficient engine and electric motor, making this car far more fuel efficient around town than it is on the highway. And that's usually not the case with other petrol engines. Obviously, the faster they go and the more constant their speed, the better their fuel consumption. Now you can see on these bends, this is nice, it's smooth, the steering has absolutely no feel, it's extremely light. The electric power steering is calibrated, of course, but it's pretty much going to do its own thing. And you just have to have the confidence that when you point the car, it's going to go there. It's not a sports car, so don't pretend that it is. But one thing you will notice about the handling is that compared to its 1.2 litre petrol stablemate, it has a little bit of extra weight in it from the batteries and the electric motor, which makes it ride better. It drives the front wheels through a CVT automatic transmission. And a hybrid is about the only time when a CVT is really any good. And that's because you basically have no other choice. There was once a Honda manual, and that was really lovely, but sadly it didn't last very long. It really is delightful. So on country roads, this is fairly smooth and fairly precise. On the highway though, it is a limousine. Now that we are up to speed, you'll notice that basically the cabin is fairly quiet. Every now and then you can hear the engine rev because it's charging the battery or driving the wheels, or both. Between the two driver's dials there's a digital readout that, as with most of them, you can choose to have what you want displayed on it, and in that is the way the power can be used. So there's a little diagram that has arrows that go from the engine, etc., etc. I was about to put my cruise control on and I realised that it wouldn't operate, and that's because I had it in regenerative braking mode. It will not work in regenerative braking mode. I don't know why, but it won't. There's bound to be a technical reason. The other thing is there's plenty of cubby holes. There's a couple of cup holders in the front, and there's also some bottle holders in the doors for very small bottles. The sound system, of course, is made by JBL, and the top model still has good sound despite the fact that it's not really an expensive car. One thing you'll note as you look around the cabin is the surfaces have some interesting details. There's a little bit of kind of diamond plastic on the doors. I think I could do without that. And some satin trim. The satin trim makes it particularly good at this time of the afternoon. It's less to shine in your eyes. There's piano black here around the screen and air conditioning controls, which goes across the dashboard as well. As we took off just then, it took off in EV mode. And it's kind of spooky. You find yourself creeping through car parks in almost complete silence, except for the faintest whine of that electric motor, which now I normally associate with taxis. There's one particularly brilliant feature. I did demonstrate it in the Land Cruiser video, but I think it's well worth mentioning again. And that is Toyota's particularly clever 360-degree camera. There's cameras all around the car, in the mirrors, front and back, and it allows you to see all the way around the car. So I'm just going to switch it on. And you can see here, the side panel gives you a top-down view, and you can see the car pulled up behind me and the white lines either side, and this camera points to the front. Now it turns off, of course, when you start to move again, but if I was to put that in automatic mode, it'll do that every single time it stops. It drives you mad. But the other thing that it does is when you stop, especially late at night, especially for the ladies, that you can have a little look around outside to make sure no one's crouching outside your car who means to do you harm. And that's it. Toyota CHR. Not a bad little bit of kit as far as I'm concerned. It's good value for money, very nice to drive, and I think it looks pretty good. As always, if you've liked the film, leave a comment below. Don't forget to hit like, but above all, hit just there to subscribe and excuse the birds again.